Welcome, everyone, to the Meaningful Hearts podcast, where we discuss the everyday questions that make us or break us if we let them. I am your host, Drew. Take my hand and let's walk this journey together. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. And today I want to go back in time to the beginning of the year. But Drew, the year just started. Why are we going back to the beginning? Well, I want to revisit something. I want to revisit the whole goal-making thing, right? That whole thing that we talked about, right? All that shit we were talking at the beginning of the year or right before the year started about, shaping our goals and getting ourselves prepared for another great year of continued success, right? But what if the goals were the issue? What do you mean? Setting goals is a great thing. It's a positive thing. It is a positive thing to set goals. But overall, what kind of system do we have in place to execute these goals? Right? We talk about goals. Goals are great. You set them up, you knock them down. But for longevity purposes, right? For the mission that you're on, how do you continue to progress, right? I always like to go back to the weight loss thing or the fitness goal, right? It's a goal, which means once you hit it, it drops off, right? And then you're like, okay, now what? And that's where we all falter. We falter because we don't have a next step. We don't have a next thing to do. So we go right back to before we had that goal because there's nothing to achieve. So we actually create the issue again to go after the same goal once again. That sounds ridiculous, right? But that's pretty much what happens to most of us. We have goals. We achieve them sometimes, and we go right back. And it's like you never really go forward. It's a loop that you're in. Now, I've been reading the book, great book, Atomic Habits, and they mention that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. And getting 1% better every day counts for a lot in the long run. Habits are a double-edged sword, though, right? They can work for you or against you. What does that mean? Well, you can plan to do one thing better every day, incrementally, and that will steer you overall in a better direction. Or little bad habits over time could equate to something bad, health, financial issues, or whatever, right? So in this book, they talk about building a better system. Because a lot of people falter with goals because there's no long-term success in that. It's short-term. Once it's achieved, that's it, right? But the idea is to not change the goal every time. They mention in the book, both teams want to win a championship, right? One team beats the other team and wins the championship. Both teams had the same goal to win. They both wanted to win, but why did one team win over the other? Well, they had a better system in place in order to execute that win, right? And as long as they have that system in place, they'll probably have continued success every season. And that's why some teams are better than other teams. That's why you always see the battle over coaches. I mean, listen, you could have the best players. I've seen some of the best teams on paper as far as players are concerned, but cannot win a championship. It's pitiful. But sometimes you got to shake things up. You got to add different coaches. You got to implement different things. And that's where the key is. What are you implementing? What is your system in place for these great players that you have? What is the system in place for you? You're that star player that's sitting on the bench, just can't get that championship ring, right? That prized life that you want. What do? Do you keep going through the same process of starting and failing? Or do you sit back for a moment and say, you know what? There's got to be more to this. There has to be more to this than what I'm seeing. And I have to actually set myself up for success. And I have to have a plan that supersedes the little goals in between. So what do? You draw up a plan, right? You get a system in place that works. Now, nobody's asking you to change overnight. What it's basically saying is, and even in the book, they talk about is incremental changes. So nobody's asking you to do something crazy. They're not asking you to do a complete overhaul of your life in a day. You'll fail. Just not realistic. But you can tweak a thing here, a thing here, a thing here. You maybe get up a half an hour earlier every day, right? You want to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning. You want to be part of that club. That's cool. But realistically, if you get up at 9 in the morning every day to go to work or whatever, getting up at 5 is quite a feat. It's very tough to do that. But you can incrementally every day get up a little bit earlier. That's more attainable for somebody, right? Do that over the course of months to a year. And you might, by the end of that year, achieve 8 o'clock to, I don't know, maybe on average 6 o'clock in the morning. I don't know. You might jump between those times, but you've made progress over time, but you incrementally did it. And now it's attainable long term because you had the system set in place and you had an execution point and you understood what you wanted to do, but you wanted to join that long term, right? And then the next year or whatever, you incrementally dial back further because maybe 7:30 is easy and you want to get to the sweet spot of 6 to 5:30 ish, right? So you start dialing back more and then you achieve that. And slowly you get to 5 in the morning, right? Boom, you're set in place. Now, it's not only just waking up early that you wanted to achieve, right? You say, you know what? I want to get my fitness goals up. I want to be able to do this or that. Well, now you're starting to create more time for yourself there. So you start adding in maybe a little bit of fitness in there. Maybe you have that new Peloton for Christmas that you're dusting off for the first time. Now you got that half an hour that you didn't see you had during the day to do it. So now you're on your Peloton, half an hour. Well, as time increases and your fitness increases, you can start doing more fitness. Hey, you know what? Let me get some weights. You know what? Let me get this. Let me get that. Let me start doing this. Next thing you know, you have a whole routine. Now you're doing an hour's worth or an hour and a half's worth of fitness. You're waking up nice and early. Boom. You're smashing it. Now you're going to get a little bit more the next year and the year after that. By the time, a couple years roll around, a few years roll around, now you get up at 5. You have a fitness routine. You're in the best shape of your life. You're looking great. But you know what? You could still add more to that. There's still more time, right? So, I want to read a little bit. Boom, you get your self-help book or something that's going to help you. You add that to the routine. It's like juggling. You add a few more things on, a few more things on. You start to add more stuff on. Then over time, if you really start to look at this, you are overhauling your whole life. Your habits will slowly change because you're doing incremental changes. Incremental changes to your fitness. Incremental changes to your sleeping habits. Incremental changes to your productivity. All these things are slight incremental changes that you did over time, which will lead to a more fruitful and successful life. Now you can apply your abilities to wake up earlier. Maybe there's a business you wanted to start. Well, you're creating that time for yourself. Now you know that you can count on yourself to get up at 5 in the morning. The whole world is asleep. You have a head start. Work, nothing. By the time 9 o'clock hits, it's going to feel like lunchtime. You're going to show up to work like the man. You're going to show up to work like the man or the woman, or you're going to show up and you're going to be fired up to do whatever. You're going to be late into the day already. You're going to be just wired. But because you've accomplished so much, it's going to bleed over into other things of your other aspects of your life. And all you did was make little incremental changes. It started with wanting to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, knowing you couldn't do that, but you slowly turned a little more. You made little incremental changes. You woke up a little bit earlier and you started to get a little more daring and notice that you were plateauing, so you wanted to move a little more. Now you're just on fire and you're starting to add more in. And then you start applying this mentality, this muscle that you've worked. You're applying this muscle to everything that you do in your life because you put a system in place. It wasn't the goal. People want to climb Mount Everest. That's awesome. That's a goal. But how the fuck are you going to get there? That just doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't. There's plans involved. There are people that plan their lives to do this. And they train and they go through the whole process. But they have a system in place that's realistic, slowly digestible. You're not going to eat the whole thing. You're not going to eat the whole horse in one bite, right? Little bites at a time. But you have to have a plan in place. You have to see if you like horse. I don't know. But what I'm saying is that you have to do this in increments. So I wanted to backtrack a little bit and talk about goals and how they can affect you in the good or bad ways. But it really comes down to the incremental change. These habits, right? These habits that you create for yourself, they don't have to be big. You don't have to make a big splash in a pool. You don't have to. Why do that to yourself? Why push yourself so hard to fail when you could do something lightly, with more intention, with more fire, and show yourself that you could do it? And you slowly edge into more and more, and you take on more. That's literally what I want to get at today. That's literally what I wanted to talk about today. We're 20 days into the month. I want to know your feedback. Where are we at? Where are we at on everything we talked about? All that shit we talked, where are we at on that? I want to know. I want to know if maybe you already had a system before you heard my podcast. Like, hey, Drew, I'm on this already, man. I don't know where you've been at, but I'm already on this. Well, that's awesome. That's fucking awesome. I'm just trying to remind anybody else out there that failure is inevitable if you're trying to do things in a fashion that's just unrealistic, especially for somebody that hasn't really tried anything. Be realistic with yourself. 1%. Taking this out of the book. Atomic Habits. Awesome book. Grab it. Shameless plug. I'm enjoying the book. It's got great stuff in there. It's an easy read, right? It's a very easy read. And they summarize everything at the end of the chapter, which pretty much reinforces what you're talking about. Things like, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. That is so fucking cool. It's so important because it's true. Can't do shit without a good system. Can't win a championship without a good coaching staff and system in place to take these players and run them through. I can give you all the money in the world. If you don't have an idea on how to execute anything, you're just going to blow through money and fail. A great idea requires money, but the idea itself and the way to facilitate it and understanding of what to do is going to get you a lot further than having all the money in the world and no idea, no clue. I love you all, and I hope that you take this and run with it because this is really good information. I love you all. Thank you for listening, and I will check you again on the next one. Bye-bye.